Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for the 16th Annual Tetsuo Najita Distinguished Lecture in Japanese Studies. My name is Susan Burns, and I'm the Director of the Center for East Asian Studies at the University of Chicago and Professor of History in the Departments of History and East Asian Languages and Civilizations. Tonight's program is brought to you by the Center for East Asian Studies at the University of Chicago, otherwise known as CEAS, and the International House Global Voices Lecture Series program. CEAS is a U.S. Department of Education designated National Resource Center and supports a variety of activities on campus and beyond to promote teaching, research, interdisciplinary scholarship, and greater public understanding related to the study of China, Korea, and Japan. For more information on CEAS and our many activities, and to subscribe to receive weekly outreach emails pertaining to our events, please click on the links that will be provided in the chat box. To provide more details about tonight's co-sponsor, I'd like to introduce Michael Kuma, Assistant Director of Programs and Communications at International House on the campus of the University of Chicago. Michael?
Thank you, Susan. Hello, everyone, and greetings from Hyde Park in Chicago. As Susan suggests, my name is Michael Kulma, and I'm the Head of Programs and Communications at International House. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's program with Dr. Yuhashi. We're delighted to be working together again with the Center for East Asian Studies on the annual Najita Distinguished Lecture. Today's program is one of many held annually by International House as part of our Global Voices Lecture Series. This is a big year for International House in Chicago as we're celebrating an important milestone, our 90th anniversary. From the day International House opened its doors 90 years ago, our mission has been to promote cross-cultural understanding, mutual respect, and friendship among students and scholars from around the world. That mission is made manifest through programs like this, and that mission guides the work of the 15 international houses around the world, including the house in Tokyo. If you're in Chicago or might be visiting Chicago, we invite you to join us here at International House throughout the year, and you can learn more about our programming on our website and following us on social media. A few thank yous before I turn the floor back over. First, and again, thank you to our partners at the Center for East Asian Studies. Second, thank you, Dr. Yuhashi. And finally, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Next, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Tetsuo Najita, for whom this lecture is named. In 2007, the Japan Committee of the Center for East Asian Studies created the Najita Lecture Series to honor Professor Tetsuo Najita's many contributions to the development of Japanese studies here at the University of Chicago. Educated at Grinnell College and Harvard University, Professor Najita joined the Department of History in 1969 and was a member of our faculty for 33 years until his retirement in 2002. His many publications on Japan's early modern and modern intellectual history include Harakei and the Politics of Compromise, which was published in 1967 and which was awarded the John K. Fairbank Prize in East Asian History. He also authored Visions of Virtue, the Kaitokudo Academy of Osaka, which was published in 1987 and which won the Yamagata Banto Prize. After his retirement, Professor Najita continued his research and writing. In 2008, he published a new work in Japanese on the topic of doing intellectual history. And in 2009, the University of California Press published his work, Ordinary Economies in Japan, A Historical Perspective. In addition to this impressive record of scholarship, Professor Najita dedicated much energy to supporting the Japanese Studies program and the Center for East Asian Studies. He was the center director from 1974 to 1980, and he played a leading role in building up our Japanese Studies endowment, which today funds faculty and graduate research, supports our Japanese collection at the library, and makes it possible for us to sponsor events such as this one. He also trained many, many graduate students who hold faculty positions around the country and abroad, and I'm very proud to say that I was one of his students. Sadly, Professor Najita passed away in January 2020, but his record of research, teaching, and service to the University of Chicago continues to aid and inspire us. In 2021, the center launched a tribute webpage to share memories and photos to honor Professor Najita's legacy here. Please click on the link provided in the chat box to view this special webpage. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleagues here at the University of Chicago. Kazuo Yamaguchi, who is the Ralph Lewis Professor in the Department of Sociology, will be introducing our speaker tonight. And Michael Bordache, Robert S. Ingersoll Professor in the Department of East Asian Languages and Civilizations and the college, will help facilitate this evening's program. Upon the conclusion of Professor Uehashi's lecture, we'll have a Q&A section where attendees will have the opportunity to ask Professor Uehashi any questions they may have. To ask a question, please be sure to type your question into the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So now I will turn things over to Professor Yamaguchi.
Hi, thank you very much, Susan. I'm very pleased and honored to introduce Uehashi-san, who is a recipient of numerous awards in Japan and in the US for her Moribito, the Guardian series, and the Beast Player series, which are both available in English, and the Deer King series, which will soon be published in English. And Kathy Hirano, who also participated in today's event, translated all of them to English beautifully. So, what's a fascinating thing in the Uehashi fantasy novels? I'd say that it is above all the vivid and rich images of a kind of imaginative medieval worlds where both magic as well as sciences influence people's minds and actions. Actions and interactions such as wars, battles, colonizations, resistance, alliances, and other political actions are richly present in her stories. The breadth in the image of the world she depicts is thus quite comparable to, in my opinion, to the imaginative richness of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth. But unlike Tolkien's stories where hobbits, elves, dwarfs, and goblins act and play their roles, it is all human groups, such as nations and ethnic groups, as well as individuals who act and play a role in the Uehashi stories and in the real world. And it is conspicuous that no actors or groups represent the evil. And therefore, her stories do not have a characteristic of stories influenced by Christianity. On the other hand, there are imaginative animals that play important roles in her stories. And in the case of Pyoika, the flying deer, and Fire Horse in the Deer King stories, and the royal beast, which are gigantic birds, and Tora, the fighting wizard in the Beast Player stories. Those animals that get involved in human conflicts often have some fascinating social interactions with heroes and heroines of the stories. Another major reason I found the Uehashi stories intriguing as a sociologist is the fact that it seems that Uehashi-san seeks to provide some answers to a question how individuals can nurture interpersonal trust across different ethnic groups and nations, and can fulfill individual lives in such a multicultural and multi-ethnic world of potential conflicts. While describing cultural diversity therein, her stories does not suffer from the cultural relativism and seems to consider that not only sensitivity and empathy to other people's cultures, but also an implicit universalistic altruism in carrying philosophies, including that of medical practitioners, in emphasizing human sufferings from diseases, injuries, as well as from war calamities as important elements for developing multiculturalism. She also seems to consider that how individuals themselves cope with suffering and hardship in their youth as important elements of acquiring empathetic personality, as represented, for example, by Basa, the heroine of the Moribito series, and an expert of the short spear, who lost parents in childhood by political murder, and Prince Chagam, an ousted and life-threatened crown prince of the kingdom by his own distrustful father. The Prince Chagam is helped and protected only by Basa. The fact that the heroes of the stories typically experience hardship in youth and childhood before accomplishing great things reminds me of the Rosemary Sutcliffe's Roman Britain stories. But in Uehashi stories, these heroes and heroines not only acquire courage to live positively despite their own hardship, but also develop empathy toward many other people's hardship across the boundary of nations and ethnic groups. It is noteworthy that Uehashi-san, who is a cultural anthropologist, as well as a novelist, seems to have acquired such philosophies through her professional life about which we may hear today. It is also noteworthy that while her stories have strong moral basis, her stories are not directly influenced by Christianity and therefore provides important source of thinking about nurturing non-religious moral bases that will enhance people's well-being in societies. Finally, I also wish to mention that our exposure to the Uehashi world would not have been as rich without an excellent English translation of her books by Kathy Hirano, who is with our pleasure willing to serve today as an interpreter of Uehashi-san's Najita lectures. The floor is yours, Uehashi-san.
Thank you so much. It's great. Thank you. Okay, just start. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nahoko Uehashi. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm deeply grateful for this wonderful opportunity. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Professor Kazuo Yamaguchi, Professor Michael Bodash, all those who helped make this lecture possible, and to Cassie Hirano for interpreting. I'm so sorry I couldn't go to Chicago. Thank you so much for holding this lecture online instead, even though it means you must join me late in the evening. Thank you. Although I conducted fieldwork in Australia as a cultural anthropologist, to be honest, I'm not very good at English. Maybe already you know that. In addition, for the last 20 years, or maybe more than 20 years, I have focused on my writing. So I have asked Cassie Hirano to interpret for me today. Well, thank you, Cassie. From here on, I will speak in Japanese. 今日は皆さんに私が物語を生み出していくときに起こる不思議な現象から見えてくることをお話ししたいと思います。
Today, I would like to speak about the concept of monogatari, with a particular focus on the mysterious process of how they come alive inside my mind.
私が書いているのは、先ほど山口先生がおっしゃったような指輪物語のような子供から大人まで関係なく、子供も大人も関係なく楽しめる物語です。で、皆さんは日本文化に造詣が深いので、きっとご存知だと思うんですけれども、日本語の物語という言葉は、神話や伝説から私が書いている現代文学のようなものまで、すべてを含み込むことができる概念です。残念ながら、この概念にぴったりと合う英語を見つけることができなかったので、この講演では、日本語の物語という言葉をそのまま英語翻訳でも使わせていただきます。
As Professor Yamaguchi mentioned, the works I write, like The Lord of the Rings, can be enjoyed by children and adults alike. Being well versed in Japanese culture, you're likely aware that the concept of monogatari encompasses everything from ancient myths and legends right up to contemporary literature, including works like mine. Unfortunately, we were unable to find an exact equivalent in English for the term monogatari. So please allow us to use the Japanese word in the English translation.
私はもうすでに34年も作家として生きてきました。物語を書くのは私にとってはもう最高に幸せなことなんですが、でも書き終えたとき私は必ず強い不安を覚えます。 もう二度と物語を書くことはできないんじゃないかなという不安です。
30 years have passed since I became a writer. Writing brings me the greatest joy. Yet each time I complete a work, I'm overcome with fear. The fear that I may never be able to write another.
物語はある日突然私の中に宿るんですけれども、どうやって宿るのかという一番大切なところがどうもよくわからないんです。
The fact is that I still don't understand the most crucial part of the writing process, how monogatari are conceived within me.
私は技術だけで物語を書くことができません。頭の中に書きたいと感じる物語が宿ってくれなければ書けないんです。
Skill alone is not enough to create monogatari, unless one that impels me to put it into words takes root in my head. I can't write.
頭の中にいつ物語がやってきてくれるのかがわからないので、出筆の依頼を受けても、いただいても、書けるかどうかわからないんですけれど、書くことができたらお渡しします。それでよろしければといつもお伝えしています。
I never know when a monogatari will come to me. So I always tell editors who ask me to write a book, I don't know if I can write anything, but if I can, I'll let you know when it's done, okay?
その条件を飲んでくださった編集者たちに、出来上がった物語をご依頼してくださった順番にお渡ししているんですけれども、昨年出版したこのこうくんっていう物語があるんですが、この物語の編集者さんたちは、順番が回ってくるまでになんと20年待ったとおっしゃってました。
Each time I complete a book, I give it to those editors who were willing to accept this condition in the order of their request. The editors of Kokun, which I just showed you, was published last year. They told me they had waited 2 whole decades for it.
待っている間も、各社の編集者さんたちは、時々レストランに誘ってくださるので、私は美味しい餌で太らせていただいているのに、なかなか卵を産まない面取りのような気分でとっても気持ちが重いです。
While waiting, the editors of various publishers occasionally invite me out for meals. So sometimes I feel like a hen who is being fattened up with delicious food, yet who fails to deliver the eggs.
物語の種が宿る時だけでなくて、書いている最中でも自分がどうやってやっているのかがわからない部分があるんです。インタビュー取材などでよく上橋先生はプロットも立てずに物語を書き始めるそうですが、そんな方法で一体どうやってあんなに長い物語を書くんですかって聞かれるんですけれど、私はいつもそれが自分でもわかんないんです、よくわからないんですよと答えています。
Not only do I not understand how the seed of a story takes root inside me, I also don't understand certain parts of my own writing process. Many interviewers ask how on earth I can produce such epic works without at least writing a plot line. To this I can only say, I wish I knew that myself.
私は長編作家で、アメリカ合衆国でも出版されたこのビーストプレイヤーは344ページありますけれども、プロットを立てませんでした。
I do indeed write long works. This book, The Beast Player, which was published in America, for example, is 344 pages long, but I never wrote a plot line for it.
これまで一度も書き始める前にプロットを立てたことがないんです。書き始めてからは様々なことを検証してみたり考えたりしますが、書き始める前に登場人物について考えたり、地図を作ったり、どういう世界であるかを考えたり、ストーリーを考えてみるというようなことをしたことがないんです。
In fact, I have never started off with a plot for any of the books I have written. After I start writing, I do consider and investigate various details. But before that, I never think about the characters, draw up a map, describe the setting, or develop a storyline.
私がプロットをあらかじめ立てない理由は後でお話ししますが、プロットを立てても立てなくても、物語が頭に宿った瞬間に、物語の全体像のようなものがふわっと頭に浮かぶので、物語を書き終えることはできます。
I'll explain later why I never begin with a plot. But even without one, the moment a monogatari germinates inside me, a vision of the overall story rises in my mind, allowing me to write it from beginning to end.
でも書いている時も、自分でこうしようと思って書いている部分と、なぜか突然、次々に様々なことが頭の中に浮かんできて書ける部分、思い返してみても、自分でもどうやって書いているのかがわからない部分が混在してるんですね。なので、書き終えた時にいつも次はもうこんなことできないんじゃないかなって怖くなってしまうんです。
During the writing process, there are some parts I write consciously with a plan in mind, and others that just leap unbidden into my head. Parts that when I look back later, I wonder how I wrote them. Because these sudden inspirations are inextricably entwined with my writing, every time I finish a monogatari, I'm terrified I may never be able to write like that again.
物語が頭に宿った瞬間は覚えてます。
I do remember the moment the seed of a monogatari first appears.
例えば、この The Beast Player が生まれたきっかけは、車を運転してた時に、いきなり頭の中に浮かんできた光景でした。深い峡谷を見下ろす崖の上に、背の高い女性が立っていて、うつむいて一心に盾事を弾いている光景です。暗い夜で、風が強くて、彼女の髪の毛が風に吹かれて揺れていました。
With the Beast Player, for example, it was while I was driving. A scene flashed through my mind. I saw a tall woman standing at the top of a cliff overlooking a deep ravine. Head bowed, she strummed a handheld harp. It was a dark night, and a strong wind tugged at her hair.
一体この女性はなんでこんなところで盾事を弾いているんだろうと思ったときに、彼女が立っている崖とは反対側の峡谷の向こう側の崖の中腹あたりにいくつもの光が見えたんです。ああ、あれは目が光ってるんだ。あそこに何かいると思いました。ここから見てもあんなに大きく見えるってしっかり見えるんだから、とても大きな獣があそこにいるんだなと思いました。
What's she doing there playing her harp? I wondered. At that moment, I noticed light shining midway down the cliff opposite the one on which she stood. Those must be eyes shining, I thought. Something's there. If those eyes look so large from here, the creatures over there must be huge.
そして気づいたんです。彼女はあの獣たちを眠らせるために盾事を弾いているんだと。
Then it hit me. The woman was lulling the creatures to sleep with her harp.
こういう光景がなぜ頭の中に浮かんできたのか全くわかりません。ただいきなり浮かんできたんです。
I have no idea why this scene came to me, but it did, and without any warning.
それにこういう光景が浮かんできたら、それで物語が書けるかというと、そういうわけではなくて、それから長い間物語にはなりませんでした。そこにある日、第二のきっかけがやってきました。
The appearance of that one scene, however, didn't mean I could start writing. It would be a long time before this image evolved into a monogatari. Then, one day, the second inspiration came.
それはランチを食べながら読んでいた、この養蜂に関する本でした。この本の中で、養蜂家が蜂蜜を絞ってみたら、蜂蜜が赤かった。どうして赤いのか調べてみたら、野バラが咲いていたって書いてあったんです。
It happened when I was reading a book on beekeeping while eating lunch. I came across an episode in which a beekeeper was surprised to find the honey he had strained was red. He traced the cause to wild roses blooming nearby.
その時、 あれ、そういえば蜂蜜って何？ただの花の蜜じゃないよね、と思いました。その瞬間、女の子の姿が頭に浮かびました。しゃがんで、絞られた蜂蜜がこう出てくるのを見つめながら、蜂蜜って、じゃあ、蜂蜜ね、蜂蜜って何なんだろうって考えている女の子です。
That made me think, what is honey anyway? Isn't it just flower nectar? With that thought, the image of a young girl rose in my mind. She was crouched down, watching honey drip from a press, and thinking, I wonder what honey is.
その子が見えた途端、この女の子がいずれあの崖の上に立つ女性になると思いました。
As soon as I saw her, I knew that this girl would grow up to become the woman on the cliff.
その途端、ミツバチの女王を頂点とする一糸乱れぬ統制が取れた社会形態や、それと似て非なる人間の社会、人とは異なる形で世界を認識していて、行動している獣とコミュニケーションが取れたとしたら、どんな事態が生じるか、などの連想が一気に頭の中を駆け巡って、書けると思いました。
At that moment, a series of associations raced through my mind. The rigidly controlled society of honeybees with the queen at the top. Human society, which is similar yet different. The thought of what might happen if we could communicate with wild beasts, which see and interact with the world so differently from us. Now I thought, I can write.
そう思ったら、一行目から書き始めてしまいます。
When I feel that way, I can start writing from the first scene.
女の子が一人で寝ている。雨が降っていて、屋根に雨が当たる音がする。遠くで雷も鳴っていて、早くお母さん帰ってこないかなと思っている。やがてお母さんが帰ってきて、手を洗う音が聞こえてくる。
The scene that unfolded in my mind was this. A little girl lies in bed alone, rain drumming on the roof and thunder rolling in the distance. She wishes her mother would hurry up and come home. Before long, her mother returns, and the girl hears her washing her hands.
お母さんがそばに来て、隣の寝床に入って、毛布を体にかけた途端に、ふわっと甘いような不思議な匂いがして、その匂いを嗅いだ途端に、これはお母さんが今まで触っていた生き物の匂いだと思って、その瞬間、トーダという生き物の姿や、その生態が頭の中に浮かんでくる。そういう書き方をしてるんです。
As the mother raises the covers to lie down beside her, the girl smells an odd sweet scent. She thinks, the scent of the creatures my mother takes care of. With those words, an image of the Toda, giant fighting lizards, and their entire ecology leaped into my mind. This is what my writing process is like.
でもそもそも一体なんで突然頭の中にこういう光景が見えてくるんでしょうね。
But why do such scenes pop into my head in the first place?
その理由としてまず思いつくのは当然のことですけど、私の知識とか経験がこういう連想を生み出しているんだろうということです。その検証のためにごく短く私の生い立ちについてお話ししますね。
One reason that comes to mind, of course, is that they are born from my own knowledge and experience. As evidence of this, let me briefly share my background.
私は1962年に東京で生まれました。よく熱を出して寝込む子供でしたけれども、優しくて好奇心旺盛だった母は、そんな私にたくさんの本を読んでくれました。
I was born in Tokyo in 1962. As a child, I often came down with fevers that confined me to bed. At those times, my mother, a kind woman full of curiosity, read me many books.
This is my mom. で、私の父は洋画家で、時々自分の絵画表現について話してくれました。私は物語を書くときに、削る作業を大事にしてるんですけれど、 それは父の影響があるかもしれません。
My father was a Western style painter who sometimes talked to me about his art. In my writing, I value the process of paring down, and this is likely due to his influence.
その詳細は割愛しますけれど、ご興味があったら、質疑応答の時に尋ねてください。でこうやってあらかじめ質問を誘導しておけば、答えるのが難しいと質問が突然飛んできて困っちゃう前に、質問時間が終了できて助かりますので。
I'll skip the details here for time's sake, but if you're interested in this process, please ask me during the question period. Of course, guiding you to certain questions in advance is a way to save myself from being asked more difficult questions that I can't answer.
By the way, this is my father's painting. See that?
Yeah.
And this is my father and me. This is me. さて、父と母の他に幼少期の私に大きな影響を与えたのが私の祖母でした。父方の祖母でした。I show you my grandmother. Maybe very small pictures. You can't see that. She is my grandmother. 彼女は民間伝承の宝庫のような人で、猫が人間の赤ちゃんをさらって山の中で育てていた話など、人と獣が近しく交わる民間伝承をたくさん話してくれました。
In addition to my parents, my paternal grandmother also had a major influence on me in my childhood. She was a treasure trove of folk tales, many of which described close interactions between man and beast, such as a cat who kidnapped a child and raised it in the mountains.
私は万物の中で人間が特別な存在であるという感覚が希薄なんです。意識が希薄なんですけれど、そういう感覚は祖母が育ててくれたのかもしれません。
I generally don't think of humans as unique or special among all creatures, and this perspective was likely nurtured by my grandmother.
また私は幼い頃から時はいつ始まっていつ終わるんだろうなど、この世の中が、この世がなぜこのようにあるのかということを考えずにはいられない子供でした。
As a child, I couldn't help but wonder why the world is the way it is. I pondered questions like, when did time begin and when will it end?
獣の奏者の主人公のエリンは、この世はなぜこのようにあるのかということを知りたくて観察をし学び続ける人ですけれども、こういう主人公が私の中に生まれてきたのは、やはり私の生い立ちや性格が関係してるんでしょうね。
Ellen, the main character of The Beast Player, wanted to understand the world too, and she spent her life studying and observing. That such a character came to me is surely related to my upbringing and personality.
私の祖母はまた、祖母の祖父のこともよく話してくれました。彼は柔術の達人で、老人になってもたくましい若者たちを右へ左へと投げ飛ばしたという話を聞いて、幼い私は興奮しました。で、私が武術が大好きになってしまった原因も、この祖母が作ったんだと思います。で、これは私が柔術をやっているところです。
My grandmother also told me stories about her own grandfather. He was a master of jujutsu, and it thrilled me to hear that he could throw powerful young opponents around with ease, even in his old age. I guess my infatuation with martial arts also stems from my grandmother.
大学院に始めた頃、柔術の道場に通ったことがあるんですけれども、自分の体で経験したことは、森人シリーズなどを書くときにとても役に立ちました。
I studied jujutsu myself for a while when I entered graduate school, and that photo I just showed was of me doing that. That experience was very helpful for writing such works as the Moribito series.
そして10代の頃、私は人生を変える本たちに出会ったんです。トールキンの指輪物語、 ローズマリー・サトクリフの第9軍団の足、灯火を掲げてなど、またアーサー・ランサムのツバメ号とアマゾン号など、たくさんの宝物のような英米の物語に出会っていきました。
In my teens, I encountered books that would change my life. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, Rosemary Sutcliffe's The Eagle of the Ninth and the Lantern Bearers, Arthur Ransom's Swallows and Amazons, and so many other gems from the UK and America.
特にトールキンとサトクリフは私にとっては特別な作家で、この2人が書いていた物語を読んだとき、私は激しい衝撃を受けました。
For me, Tolkien and Sutcliffe are particularly special. Reading their works had a powerful impact on me.
読書が好きな子供にありがちなことだと思いますけれど、私は本を読んでいると、ね、戦争はいけないことでしょっていうような作者が何か諭しているような声を感じることがありました。
As a child, I often got the sense when reading a book that the author was trying to impress upon me certain lessons. Things like, war is wrong, you see? I think many young book lovers may feel this way.
そういう本は、私が子供の頃よく学校の宿題として出されていた読書感想文なんかを書くのも楽でした。
That type of book was easy to summarize for book reports, a standard homework exercise in Japanese schools when I was a child.
しかし、指輪物語やサトクリフの歴史物語は、そういう読み方をさせてくれませんでした。テーマよりも何よりもまず、圧倒的な物語の力に翻弄されてしまったんです。
But The Lord of the Rings and Sutcliffe's historical fiction refused to let me read them like that. Before anything else, the power of the narrative overwhelmed and consumed me.
読み始めた途端に、襟首をつかまれて物語の中に引っ張り込まれて、読み終えたときは、深い水の中から浮かび上がってきたような気持ちで、一体今まで自分どこにいたんだろうと思うような没入経験をしました。
From the very first page, these monogatari yanked me by the scruff of my neck and immersed me so thoroughly in their world that when I finally emerged, it was like resurfacing from deep water. And I wondered, where on earth had I been all this time?
読んでいる間、私は深い森の匂いを嗅いで、剣が打ち合わされる音を聞いて、その厳しい時代を主人公と共に必死に生き抜いていたんです。
While in that state, I smelled the deep forest, heard the clash of sword on sword, and struggled desperately alongside the protagonist to survive harsh times.
そして読み終えたとき、私の中には主人公と共に辿ってきた様々が、とても一言では言い表せないような複雑で深遠なものが宿っていました。
And when I put the book down, everything we had experienced together remained within me, things far too complex and profound to express in words.
これらの物語は作者の言葉を代弁する道具ではなくて、圧倒的な力で作者を突き動かして生まれてきた命を持った生き物のようだなと思いました。
Far from being mouthpieces for their authors, these monogatari were creatures with a life of their own, creatures that impelled their writers to bring them into this world.
こういう物語を書きたいとその時思いました。物語そのものが持つ力に魅了されるような物語を書きたいと。
I knew then that this was the kind of monogatari I wanted to write. Monogatari with the power to captivate the reader of their own accord.
この二人の物語には、異文化の背景を持つ人々が出会って、絆を作っていく過程が描かれていたことも私には魅力的でした。
I was also fascinated by the way these authors portrayed encounters between people from different cultures and the bonds those people forged.
ドワーフのギムリとエルフのレゴラスは、好む場所も美的感覚もまるっきり違いますけれども、やがて無二の友になっていきます。
The dwarf Gimli and the elf Legolas are quite different. The places they love, the beauty that attracts them, differ drastically. Yet they become inseparable friends.
また、サトクリフが描いた非征服民であるケルトの若者と征服者であるローマ兵が文化や立場、歴史を超えてゆっくりと友情を育んでいく様子にもとても心惹かれました。
Similarly, I was moved by Sutcliffe's portrayal of the slowly evolving friendship between a Celtic youth and a Roman soldier. This bond between the conquered and the conqueror transcended the barriers imposed by culture, social status, and historical circumstances.
これらの物語は私に自分が描きたい物語の姿を教えてくれたんです。
These works taught me the kind of monogatari I wanted to write.
人はある世界に生まれ落ちて、そこで生きていく、そして死んでいく存在です。世界は人のためにあるわけではなくて、人は世界を構成しているあらゆるものと同じワンのメニューに過ぎません。
We are born into a certain time and place, and in that world we live and die. The world is not here for us. Like all things that comprise it, we are just one of many.
世界をそういうものとして、人をそういうものとして感じさせる物語を書きたいと思いました。
I wanted to write monogatari that made readers experience people and the world in this way, people as constituent parts of a greater whole.
そういう物語を書くためには、世界と人類、集団と個人について、そしてそれらの相互作用について深く知らねばなりません。それで私は文化人類学者への道を進んだんです。
To do so, I needed to gain a deep knowledge of the world and humankind, of groups and individuals, and of the interactions among them. That is what led me to become a cultural anthropologist.
オーストラリアで先住民と一緒に過ごした日々は、私に様々なことを教えてくれました。
The time I spent with Aboriginal Australians also taught me many things.
私は文化の登用をしないように心がけていますので、民族固有の文化要素を物語の中で使うことはありませんが、研究する過程で学んだ人類に普遍的に見られる行動などは、物語を書く上で重要な知識になりました。
I take care not to appropriate other people's culture, so I don't use elements from specific ethnic cultures in my works. But what I learned during my research into subjects such as universal human behavior provides knowledge crucial to my writing.
例えば、自分の視点が普遍的なものであると思い込んでいる人が、いかに恐ろしいことを平然と行ってしまうかということを知ったことは、私には大きな気づきでした。
One major revelation, for example, was that those who are convinced their point of view is the universal standard can commit atrocities without a qualm.
そういう人々は自分が正しいことをしていると思い込んでいるんですから、良心の呵責というブレーキなく恐ろしい状況を生み出してしまいます。
Certain that their actions are justified, they have no guilty conscience to hold them back, and there are often horrendous results.
それは誰もが行ってしまう可能性があることで、自分がその状況に陥らないためには、一旦自分が慣れ親しんでいる世界の外に出て、自分の目を塞いでいる思い込みから自由になるしかありません。
We all have the potential to become like this. The only way to prevent it is to step outside our familiar world and free ourselves from the assumptions that blind us.
森人シリーズの主人公の女用心棒バルサは、彼女のように自分が属する社会集団から外れてしまった人というのは孤独です。
To be separated from the social group to which one belongs is to become a loner, like Balsa, the female bodyguard and protagonist of the Moribito series.
でも彼女はどの社会集団にも属さないアウトサイダーとして様々な国を渡り歩いていく中で、自分が当たり前だと思っていることが他の人にとっては必ずしも当たり前ではないということを肌で知っている人でもあります。
But as an outsider without ties to any social group, as a wanderer who travels through many foreign countries, Balsa has learned firsthand that what she takes for granted, others may not.
そういう人と出会うことで、他の人たちもまた我が身を振り返る視点を得て、新たな道が開けていくのではないかという思いが、全13巻の森人シリーズに反映されていきました。
The 13-volume Moribito series reflects my belief that interaction with people like Balsa can help others gain an objective perspective. From this broader perspective, a person can reflect on their own assumptions and beliefs and discover new approaches.
私は集団になった時の人の行動や世界と人の関係に興味があります。
I'm interested in subjects like how people behave when they form groups and how people interact with the world.
社会を形成している生き物としての人。生態系のネットワークに組み込まれて生きる生物としての人。生と死は自然の断りであるのに、そこになぜかどこか割り切れぬ虚しさを感じてしまう不思議な生き物である人間に。
I'm also interested in people as creatures who form societies. People as creatures embedded within a network of ecosystems. And people as those odd creatures who despair at the thought of death, even though life and death are immutable laws of nature.
その興味に突き動かされて学び続けて、新たな気づきを得るたびに、新しい物語が私の中に宿っていきました。
Driven by this interest, I continue to study, and with each insight gained, a new monogatari has germinated inside me.
鹿の王では、私たちの体の中にいる無数の微生物が私たちの命を支えも奪いもするという不思議と、体の外側の世界に存在している民族問題との相似を描きました。
In Shika-no-o, the Deer King, I drew parallels between the external world, where diverse ethnic groups merge or clash, and the inner world of the body, where innumerous microorganisms work to either sustain or destroy life.
最新作のコウ君では、植物や昆虫、微生物が香りによって行っているコミュニケーションを特殊な嗅覚によって感じることができる少女にとっての世界の姿を描きました。
In my latest work, Kokun, I depicted the world experienced by a young woman whose heightened sense of smell allows her to discern scent-based communication between plants, insects, and microorganisms.
私の中に生まれてくる主人公たちはいつも他の人たちとは少し違う視点で世界を見ている人たちです。
The protagonists born inside me are always people who see the world a little differently from others.
私はそういう異なる世界の境界に立って、異なる世界の間を結ぶ道を見出そうとする人は、人類が抱える問題に新しい道を見つける可能性を秘めているんじゃないかなと思っています。だからそういう主人公たちが私の中に生まれ出てきてくれたんでしょうね。
I believe that those who stand on the border between different worlds and seek for ways to connect those worlds have the potential to discover new approaches to the problems humanity is facing. That's probably why this type of protagonist emerges inside me.
こうやって振り返ってみると、やっぱり私の経験とか思想や好みが発想や連想の源になっていることはもう間違いないです。ただ、それだけでは、ある日突然、ある光景がパッと頭に浮かんでくる、あの不思議な現象が説明しきれないんですよね。
From these examples, there's no doubt that my experiences, my way of thinking, and my preferences are sources for the ideas and associations in my works. But this isn't enough to explain the strange phenomenon of a particular scene flashing unbidden into my mind.
経験や思想や技術だけで物語を書くことができるなら、一生懸命考えれば物語の種は見つかるはずです。
If monogatari could be created through experience, through my way of thinking and skill alone, I should be able to find the seed for one just by thinking hard enough.
でも私の場合、考えても考えても、書きたいという強い衝動につながる物語の種が見つからないんですよね。
But in my case, no matter how hard I think, I've never found a monogatari seed powerful enough to impel me to write.
それなのに、別に何も物語のことなんか考えてないとき、朝ごはんを作ってるときとか、車の運転をしているときなどに、自分でも全く思いもしてなかった光景が突然頭の中に浮かんでくる。
Yet when I'm not thinking about monogatari at all, when I'm making breakfast or driving the car, a scene that has never occurred to me before will leap into my head.
それはまるで私の中に泉があって、突然コンコンコンコンと水が湧き出てくるような感覚で、物語の種が宿るときだけではなくて、書いている途中でも不意にそういう瞬間が訪れます。
It feels like water suddenly bursting forth from a spring, and it happens not only when the seed first takes root, but also at other times during the writing process.
それが訪れると、私は寝食を忘れて書き続けます。湧いている水が止まらないように祈りながら、止まらないうちに書かなくちゃと思いながら、
When it does, I keep on writing, forgetting to eat or sleep, praying all the while that the flow won't stop, urging myself to keep writing before the spring runs dry.
こういう時に書いた部分は、他の部分とは明らかに違う輝きを放っていて、後で読み返してみると、誰が書いたんだろうなという不思議な感覚にとらわれます。自分で書いたとは思えないし、もう一度書けと言われてももう二度と書けません。
These portions clearly have a brilliance that differ from other parts I have written. And when I read them over later, I feel awed and puzzled about who wrote them. It seems impossible that it could have been me. And if I were asked to write them again, I couldn't.
普段の自分の頭の働き方では決して出てこないような発想や連想がある時不意にやってくる。
Ideas and associations that would never occur to me in my normal thought process suddenly appear without warning.
これは私にとっては奇跡の瞬間で、これが訪れてくれないと私の物語は生まれてこないんです。
For me, such moments are a miracle. Without them, my monogatari would never be born.
ちなみに、この不思議な現象は私だけに起きていることではなくて、例えば、サトクリフもカーネギー賞受賞の言葉としてこんなことを書いています。その部分のいくつかの文章を抜粋して、キャシーさんに読んでいただきますね。キャシーさん、お願いします。
Incidentally, I'm not the only writer who experiences this. As an example, I've asked Kathy to read some excerpts from Rosemary Sutcliffe's Carnegie Award acceptance speech. From Sutcliffe's speech. I was making the breakfast toast with my mind a beautiful early morning void, when into the void exploded a thought, and the thought stopped me in my tracks to look at it more closely and from all angles, while the toast took care of itself. I thought, and I swear my brain doesn't usually work this way by spontaneous combustion, was, yes, but the legions weren't just an occupation force. They'd been here for 450 years. 450 years, roughly the space of time that lies between ourselves and the early Tudors. And the Roman authorities had no feeling against interbreeding with the native population. By the end of 450 years of this, British blood must have been quite noticeably laced with that of the legions, and probably few legionaries could not boast at least a British grandmother. For many of them, there must have been an agony of divided loyalties. From the general, I moved deeper into the particular and began to imagine one such man, a young decurion of cavalry, another descendant of Marcus Flavius Aquila, another wearer of the dolphin signet ring. A strong smell of burning, which had been going on, as it were, in the back of my consciousness for some time, finally brought me back to the present. The toast was past praying for, but the lantern bearers was begun.
灯火を掲げて思いついたときに、彼女もこれは普通ではない頭の働き方だと感じてたわけですよね。
Clearly, Sutcliffe also experienced her brain working differently when the inspiration for the lantern bearers came to her.
私たちは誰でも、この次はこうなると筋書きを考えることはできますよね。
Anyone can think of a plot line for what will happen next.
でもそれと、あの奇跡の瞬間に湧き出てくる出来事の連なりは少し違うんです。普段は気がついていないつながりが不意に頭に浮かぶんですよ。
But the series of events that wells up during a miraculous moment is a little different. Connections normally missed jump into the author's mind.
作者が驚いてるんですから、読んでる人も思わず引き込まれてドキドキしながら読めるんでしょうね。
Authors themselves are surprised by these discoveries, so it makes sense that readers get swept up in the excitement too.
この瞬間、作者と読者の心は物語の力によって共鳴しているのかもしれません。
When that happens, it's as if the minds of the writer and the reader resonate through the power of the monogatari.
私たち人間には心地よい物語の連なり方があるようです。ある音の連なりは音楽としては別に感じられないのに、ある音の連なりは音楽として感じられるように。
Certain types of sequences seem to appeal universally to humans. Some sequences of sounds, for example, don't feel like music, while others do.
でも同じ音楽でも、ただ心地よいだけの音楽と、聞いた途端雷に打たれたように激しく心を揺すぶられる音楽があります。
But even within the realm of music, some pieces are merely pleasing, while others shake a person to the core like a clap of thunder.
その2つの間には確かに違いがあるんですが、その違いは意図して生み出せるもんなんでしょうかね。
The two clearly differ, but can we produce that difference intentionally?
意図して生み出せる人もいるんでしょうね。でも私には無理です。
Some people probably can. For me, however, this is impossible.
作家によって創作の仕方はそれぞれ違いますから、これはあくまでも私の場合です。ですが、普段の頭の働き方で考えたアイデアでは、物語を書くことができない理由がここにあるんです。
This is why I personally can't write a monogatari from an idea conceived through the normal functioning of my mind. And please note that I'm only talking about my own experience here, because every author is different.
そういう頭の状態で発想した物語は、私には輝きを放っているように感じられないんですよね。夢中になれないんです。
For me, a monogatari conceived in this state simply doesn't shine. I can't fall in love with it and be swept off my feet.
でも、不意にある光景が生々しく浮かんできて、物語全体が、その全体の姿が一瞬で見えるような現象が起きたときは、強い衝動を覚えます。
But when a scene vividly alive leaps into my mind and reveals in a single moment the entire shape of a monogatari, then I am gripped by an irresistible impulse.
これを書きたい、この物語を書きたいっていう衝動を。
The urge to write this monogatari.
これは他の発想とは違うよ。輝いているぞって感じるんです。
Unlike other ideas, this one shines.
私にとって、あの瞬間は 心の深いところにある何かにアクセスしている極めて稀な奇跡的な瞬間に思えます。
That is a rare and miraculous moment, which accesses a place deep within my mind.
普段の頭の働き方で筋書きなどを考えて、あらかじめ枠組みを作ってしまうと、あの物語が自分で自分を生み出していくような伸びやかな力が枠に遮られてしまって、邪魔されて出てこなくなってしまって、物語に命が宿らないような気がするんです。これが私があらかじめプロットを立てない最大の理由です。
This is the main reason I never try to think up a plot through regular thought processes. I fear that if I did, the elasticity and strength the monogatari requires to bring itself into being would be obstructed by the structural framework I designed, making it impossible for life to breathe within it.
物語はテーマによって評価されることが多いですよね。でも、テーマは物語とは不可分のものです。物語が命の輝きを放って初めて、テーマは単なる言葉を超えるのだと私は思います。
Monogatari are often judged by their theme, but the theme is inseparable from the story. Only after light shines forth from a monogatari does the theme transcend mere words.
そして私の場合、物語にその命の息吹を吹き込むものは、あのひらめきなんだろうと思います。
And for me, the sudden inspiration described above is what breathes life into a monogatari.
ではそのひらめきはどこからやってくるんでしょうか。
But where does that inspiration come from?
私の実感としては、まず前提としてコツコツと学んで考え続ける作業が不可欠だと思います。
My sense is that a vital prerequisite for inspiration is to be constantly engaged in learning and reflecting on that learning.
ローマ兵が属州に数百年も暮らしていたっていう事実にハッとしたのは、サトクリフがそこに潜む様々な意味に気づくことができる知識を持っていたからですよね。そうでなければ、その気づきは灯火を掲げて生み出す衝動にはなり得なかったでしょう。
The reason Sutcliffe was brought up short by the thought that Romans had lived in Britain for centuries was because she had the knowledge required to grasp the implications of this fact. Without this knowledge, she wouldn't have been driven to create the lantern bearers.
経験して考え続けてきた膨大な要素が、ある時何かのきっかけで、普段の思考では考えつかないような結びつき方をする。それがひらめきの正体なんじゃないかなと思うんです。
In response to some trigger, an enormous volume of accumulated experiences and ideas suddenly fuses together in a way that could never occur through normal thought processes. This, I think, is what inspiration is.
興味があることを追い求めて学び続けることをやめずに努力を重ねていると、ある時思いがけない贈り物のように物語の種が宿ってくれる。そういうものなんだと思います。
If I pursue my interests and keep diligently learning, one day the seed of a monogatari will take root inside me like an unexpected gift. I think that is how it works.
人の心の中には物語を生み出す力が潜んでるんでしょうね。複数の事象をある形に連ねて物語にしてしまう力が。
The ability to create, to connect and shape multiple phenomena into monogatari lies latent in the human mind.
あの不思議な瞬間は、私が経験して考えてきたことのすべてと、人という生き物が持っている物語を生み出す力が、稀有な形で結合して発動する瞬間なんだと思います。
The miraculous moment I described earlier, that's the point at which this innate universal capacity to create monogatari combines in a rare configuration with all of my thoughts and experiences and begins to move.
私と同じように、その稀有な瞬間を経験して、サトクリフが命を灯した、命を吹き込んだ物語、灯火を掲げては、10代だった私に、物語の中を主人公と共に生き抜くような圧倒的な読書経験をさせて、その後の私の人生に多大な影響を与えました。
Through the impetus of such a miraculous moment, Sutcliffe breathed life into the lantern bearers. And when I was in my teens, that work immersed me so completely, I lived right alongside its protagonist, an experience that impacted the rest of my life.
イギリスに生まれた彼女が掲げた灯火が日本に生まれた私の心に物語を生み出すきっかけとなる火を灯したんです。
The torch raised by an English author kindled a flame in the heart of this Japanese author. That in turn led to the birth of other monogatari.
物語を生み出す力と物語に感動する力を私たちは持っています。
We all have the power to create and to be moved by monogatari.
しかもこの2つの力は文化や時さえも超えて多くの人たちに共有されています。
Moreover, these abilities transcend culture and time.
イギリス人の作家と日本人の私が共に物語の種が宿る不思議な瞬間を経験しているように、
Just as a British author and a Japanese author can both experience the same magical moment when the seed of a monogatari takes root.
遠い異国の神話や伝説に心を動かされるように、
Just as we are all moved by the myths and legends of distant lands.
なぜはるか昔から世界中で多くの人々が物語を生み出してきたんでしょうね。そしてなぜ文化や状況が違ってもある物語を面白いと思って感動するんでしょう。
Why have people throughout the world been creating monogatari since ancient times? Why do people find certain ones enchanting and moving, despite coming from different cultures and circumstances?
そこには人の心の本質のようなものが関わっているような気がします。
This question touches upon the essence of the human mind.
ある音の連なりは音楽になるが、わずかに音が違うと音楽にならない。ある光景は物語を生み出すが、他の光景は生み出さない。
Certain sounds become music, while slightly different sounds do not. Certain images inspire the birth of monogatari, while others do not.
個々人で思考の違いはあるにせよ、そういう何かを私たちは共有しているんです。
Whatever the underlying criteria are, we share them in common, despite our diverse tastes.
物語はどこから生まれてくるんでしょうね。私にはまだわかりません。
Where do monogatari come from? I don't know the answer yet.
でも時々こんなことを想像します。
But sometimes I picture something like this.
普段はそれがあることにすら気づかずにいる暗い心の底に自分が経験してきたこと、様々な知識や考え、思いが降り積もっている。ある時何かのきっかけでそこに不意に微光を放つ美しい水が湧き出してきて、その降り積もったものに新しい姿を与えながら、私の意識の中に溢れ出てきて物語が生まれていく。
All the experiences, knowledge, and ideas gained in life fall into the dark recesses of my mind, into a place I'm not even aware exists. There they slowly accumulate. In response to a certain trigger, at some point, clear, radiant water gushes forth. As it floods my awareness, it imparts a new shape to what lay there, and a monogatari is born.
その泉の源には、とうとうと流れる大河があって、その大河は古今東西の人たちの心につながっている。
At the source of the spring flows a mighty river, and that river is connected to the minds of all people, past and present, near and far.
人を人たらしめている物語の命の源はそこにあって、物語はあるとき、そこからやってきて、作家を介してこの世に生まれて、その命の力で再び人々をつないでいくのではないか。
That is the life source of the monogatari that make us human. From there, through the medium of a writer, monogatari will sometimes come into this world and reconnect us through the power of their life.
長い講演を聞いていただきまして、どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you for listening.